masking and meta theatre and other things that begin with M, just by chance. Madness, mirrors. These things are all connected with the idea of identity and how early modern identity was shaped and created. And a lot of it is based around the idea of having a hidden personal identity and a public identity. It's an interesting topic for today, because the internet has really, opened up that whole question again. 50 years ago, in that sense, identity was fairly stable. You showed what you wanted to show, and you didn't show what you didn't want to show. But now, with internet, cameras in public places, we're back with this kind of question of how much of yourself can you hide? How much of yourself should you show? We're back with that kind of question. So these questions come back through history and can be important in our age as well. As I say, it focuses a lot of it around the idea of the mask and the mirror. So, what have I done? It's just getting some funny little effects in there. The world and the idea of what the world is and how theatre reflects the world. Because Shakespeare, of course, was writing drama. He was writing plays. So the relationship between the drama and the actual world outside was also an important topic, something that that was reflected in what he was doing here. So the whole question of what things mean, if anything means anything, and these are all questions, again, that come back through philosophy and psychology, and they come back through the ages. Well, we're still asking these kinds of questions. And dreams, and how dreams are connected with reality, and so on. And how dreams reflect reality. And I'm going to start with Hamlet here. Let me just check that. I think that at the beginning of Hamlet, or early on in the play, he talks about "I know not seems." In this sense, I know not means I don't know. I don't know what you mean when you say seems. Seems, do you any? Seems, right? I'm not interested in seems. I'm interested in, what really is. I'm not interested in how it looks or how you pretend it to be or you make it seem like that. I'm interested in what really is. Okay? What's going on behind the mask? Right? He's not interested in the mask itself, he's interested in what's going on behind the mask. I have that within which passeth show. I've got something inside me which goes beyond show, which goes beyond just putting on an act. I've got something inside me that's real. Now, the situation here is that his father has died and his mother has got married shortly afterwards to his father's brother, his uncle. And he's really shocked that she doesn't seem to care about her dead husband. He really cares about his father. So when she says, you seem to be like this, he says, I don't seem anything. I am. This is what I am. Very, very upset. And you just get married and have a happy wedding and don't seem to care. All right? So I know not seems. I don't know anything about pretending or putting on a show. That's what he says. I have that within which passeth show. Passeth, in early modern English, they use th at the end instead of s. We say passes in modern English. They said passeth. So it goes beyond. It passes show. It goes beyond pretending. I've got something inside me that's real. Hello? So, the speech is, why seems it so particular with thee? Why are you so upset about all of this? He says, well, seems, madam, why seems it so particular? This is where he says, seems, I know not seems. 'Tis not alone my inky cloak, good mother, nor customary suits of solemn black. It's not just that I'm wearing black because my father's died. It's not just the clothes. It's inside. Right? It's the real me. Nor windy suspiration of forced breath. Oh my God, my father, he's dead. This sort of thing goes on all through Hamlet, all through the play. There's an actor who's acting the death of someone. How can he cry? How can he's only an actor? They say. It's inside the play, there's a play inside the play. How can that actor get so worked up about something that's not even true? He's upset about Hecuba. Right? But what's Hecuba to him or he to Hecuba? He doesn't know this person Hecuba, he's just an actor. And yet, it seems so real, he's so upset. How do people, how do we do that? And we just pretend. Okay? And that's going on all through Hamlet. He's asking that question. How do we put on these acts? And he comes into Shakespeare in general. For example, the idea that one might smile and be a villain inside. Okay, that's another example of it. To smile, and yet inside you're a villain. Nobody knows your true heart. Okay, we only see your mask. We only see your face. So this is something that it was a big deal for Hamlet, in Hamlet, and a big deal for Shakespeare. They're actions that a man might play, as in acting in a play. They think that a person can pretend to do all of these things, put on black clothes and sigh and look sad, but I have that within which passeth show. I've got something that beyond just putting on an act of being sorrowful about my father's death. I really am upset. And yeah, as I say, in the acting that goes on inside the play, so you've got the play of Hamlet, inside the play of Hamlet some actors arrive, and the actors act a play inside the play. That's called a play within a play. And in Hamlet, you've got a very famous play within a play that's going on inside a play. But inside the drama, there's a drama. Okay? And Hamlet watches the performance and says, is it not monstrous that this player here, but in a fiction, in a dream of passion, could force his soul so to his own conceit, that from her working all his visage waned? His visage is his face. Just by a mad, he can make his whole face look as if he's absolutely, really, terribly upset. He's just acting. Okay? It's like when actors die on the stage, they get up the next minute. Hi, I'm okay, really, don't worry. They're just acting. Okay? Tears in his eyes, distraction in his aspect, a broken voice and his whole functions suiting with forms to his conceit, and all for nothing. He doesn't know Hecuba, that's the person that he's grieving for. So, how can we do this? The understanding that who we pretend to be is different from who we really are. There's something that goes very deep in Shakespeare and very deep in the Elizabethan age. He's crying, supposedly, for Hecuba. But what's Hecuba to him? Or he to Hecuba? He doesn't know Hecuba. That he should weep for her. Why would he cry for Hecuba when he doesn't even know he doesn't know Hecuba? So, that's the kind of idea that runs through Hamlet all the time about we're pretending all the time to be someone else. And Hamlet is saying, but I'm not like that. I really am who I really am. Except that that's not even true either. So all this grief, all this kind of strong feeling, it's just acting. Okay? And so, of course, if we can act that on the stage, then people can be pretending to us in the real world as well. We never really know what anybody else really thinks. Are they just acting it for us? Are they just putting on a show? We never really know. Okay, the actors can do it on the stage, but a lot of people, the whole world itself, as he says elsewhere, the world is a stage. So out in the real world, that's happening as well. Okay? Hamlet himself also, of course, is just an actor on a stage. He hasn't really lost his father. He's just an actor acting someone. So the irony is that it's like, it's like an onion. You take one skin off the onion, and there's another bit underneath. You keep on going, and at the middle, what is there? There's nothing. There's just more skins that come off. Okay, more layers. All right. So. Then that goes out into something we call meta-theatre. Meta-theatre is where theatre goes beyond itself, outside the theatre, outside the stage, and says, well, let's look at the real world. What about you people out there in the real world? Can you really express your feelings? Are you really who you seem to be? Who are you pretending to? What are you pretending about? Okay, so it extends beyond the stage into the world. And we talked about this. The Elizabethan age was a time when, if you expressed your true feelings, it could be dangerous. Basically, mostly about religion, but also about politics. In fact, until recently, it was commonly said, when you go to the nomia, when you go to the English pub, talk about anything you like, but not religion and not politics. Okay? Those two topics were kind of considered taboo. And still sometimes, if an argument breaks out, people say, no religion in here, no politics, okay, you can't talk about those topics in here. We just come here to have a drink and have a peaceful time. So don't talk about those topics. So religion and politics were particularly sensitive. And of course, we sort of think, well, this masking and the sensitivity of religion and politics, are there secret hidden messages about religion and politics in what he's writing? Is he saying, if I could tell you what I really feel, I would want to tell you, and one of the arguments, for example, is, I would want to tell you that I'm a Catholic, okay, in a Protestant country. And there's quite a strong body of feeling that says that Shakespeare might have been a Catholic. But here's Hamlet, the sort of tortured soul, and as I say, people like Peter Millward will want to see what Hamlet is saying as a kind of coded message, a kind of secret message about Catholicism. Peter Millward, you may not know from the Jesus Kai, taught in the Ebungatka for many years in the English Literature Department, and he died last year. I was quite a close friend of Peter Millward, but I didn't agree with him about Shakespeare's Catholicism. We sort of have interesting discussions, But that's what he thought. He thought that Shakespeare was trying to say that secretly, in his heart, he was a Catholic. But I can't say what I really feel. For example, he says, but break my heart, for I must hold my tongue, Hamlet says. And Father Millward would think he wants to say that he's a Catholic, but he can't. Okay? I disagree with that. In the context, Hamlet is just saying he has to keep silent because he's, if he's so sad about his father, but if he keeps going on about it, well, not just that I put here that others will criticize him, but it's more than that. From the beginning, he suspects that his uncle killed his father. And if Hamlet keeps on showing, I'm so sad about my father, I'm so upset about my father, the uncle may well say, well, maybe I better kill him too. Okay, so it could be dangerous for Hamlet to keep on talking about how sad he is about his father and how disappointed he is with his mother for marrying the uncle. Because the uncle did murder his father. Okay, that comes out later on in the story, that he really did murder his father. So this kind of thing was normal in that period. Protestantism says you've got to have faith in God and that good people will go to heaven. And that's another aspect of grieving for the dead. Protestantism is telling you, look, if you're dead and you're a good person, you will be in heaven anyway. So why be so sad for the dead? They are happier than you. If they were good people, they will be in heaven. So showing too much sadness about a dead person was a sign that you weren't a good Christian in those days. Okay? It's complicated, isn't it? Okay? It's natural to feel sad when somebody you love dies, but you couldn't feel too sad. Ben Jonson, another famous writer from that period, writes, "He that fears death or mourns it in the just," I've kept the early modern spelling, it should be a J there in modern spelling, shows, if you say it out loud, shows, you can understand what it means, shows of the resurrection little trust. The resurrection is that you will live again in heaven, and that Christ was born again. So if you fear death, then you don't trust the Christian message. You're not a real Christian. So, again, it could be dangerous to seem too sad for somebody that you loved who died. Okay, all sorts of things people had to be careful about in those days. So Hamlet masks his grief for his father's death for basically the same reasons as Elizabethans generally mask their grief. Because, he would seem there's something suspicious about being too sad about somebody else's death. Any strong display of grief would show a lack of trust in God's mercy. So it's just another example of the kind of thing that people had to hide and make a pretense about in that kind of society. But this is where it gets ironic. Remember, Hamlet said, "I know not seems." But what's he doing here? He is hiding the real reason for it, and he's hiding the depths of his grief, and he is making a pretense. All through the play, Hamlet, the character who knows not seems, is pretending about all sorts of things. Okay? He does know seems. Although he claims that he has that within which passeth show, he's got something inside him that goes beyond pretending, he is putting on a show. Not just as an actor, but inside his character as an actor. He's putting on a show all through the play. So you've got, as I say, it's like an onion. You take off one layer and there's another layer until you try to get to the middle of the onion and there's nothing, there's more layers all the way through. As I say, the idea that all the world's a stage. And Hamlet is hiding his feelings about his father's death. The big thing that he does there is he doesn't want people to suspect that he's dangerous. All right? His father's ghost comes to him in the story and says, "My brother killed me. Your uncle is a murderer." And Hamlet says, "I will revenge. I will kill my uncle." But if anybody suspects, then Hamlet will die. The king will kill Hamlet. The new king, the uncle, will kill Hamlet. So he has to be very careful. And so he pretends to be mad. All right, when he's walking around like this, oh God. Somebody said, "What's the matter?" He said, "I think look at that cloud. Doesn't it look like a camel?" He's a little bit mad. Yes, it looks like a camel. You know. So he tricks people by pretending to be mad. So he is pretending. So these kinds of masks and this idea of acting is something that Shakespeare uses as a metaphor for our life. The purpose of acting, according to Hamlet, is to hold up a mirror to nature, to show the real world, to show virtue her own image, scorn her own image, the very age and body of the time. The very age and body of the time, okay? The kind of essence of Elizabethan England is shown in the drama. And this is one reason why we focus so much on Shakespeare, because he really did seem to capture the essence, the very age and body of the time seems to be captured in his writing. So we really feel he gives us a window into that world. And it really was an Orgon Jidai for, the country. So it's something that people are interested in, even today. But, we always think that art imitates life, art copies life. But did you ever think that life copies art as well? So, and you think about it, you watch a movie and you think, kakkoi ne, sono zubon. And you go out and buy a pair of those trousers, okay? The art that you see becomes something that you want to copy. Or you say, look at the relationship. Romantiku janai, watashi mo souyuu romantiku no. I want that kind of relationship. And so we're living out dreams that come from the media. All right, so art imitates life, but life also imitates art. And Shakespeare understood this very well as well. It's not just on the stage, for example, that you can smile and be a villain. All the world's a stage. This is famous from As You Like It. All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances. And one man in his time plays many parts, his acts being 7 ages. At first, the infant mewling and puking in the nurse's arms, then the whining schoolboy with his satchel and shining morning face, climbing like a snail unwillingly to school, and then the lover, sighing like furnace with a woeful ballad made to his mistress eyebrow, then a soldier full of strange oaths and bearded like... He's going through this, what we're seeing as the 7 ages of a man's life. And this is another, until in the end, you end up in second childishness, second childhood. You become like a baby again. You go around full circle. And you are... Sans is the French word for without teeth, without eyes, without taste, without everything. You just go back to being like a baby again. So these are the 7 ages of our life, and the idea that the world itself is a kind of act. We come here, we are like poor, again he says it in Macbeth, we are like poor players on a stage, we strut our little act, and then we die and we're gone again. So we're brought onto the stage of the world, we act out our part, and then we die. So it's a very strong sort of metaphor. Hello? And this is a kind of tokorode, by the way. One thing about Shakespeare is that there's almost nothing new in Shakespeare. The stories that he tells, the story of Hamlet, is not a new story. Almost everything that Shakespeare gives us, Romeo and Juliet, it's not a new story. It existed before. What he does, he gives it a kind of unique form, a unique shape, the way of expressing, the way of... he tells the story very well, okay? But he's not, most of what he says is taken from somebody else's idea. So the story of Hamlet was a Scandinavian tale first written down in the 12th century. And the idea of the world as a stage and of life as a play with 7 acts, that goes back to the classical times. It goes back to Roman times, the idea that the world is a stage, and it was popular in Renaissance times, and the idea that art imitates life, that comes from Aristotle, Aristoteles. There's nothing very much new in Shakespeare. What's interesting is the way he brings it all together and puts it together. So Shakespeare, if we're going to think about him, he's not so much an originator of new ideas. He's a synthesizer of old ideas. He brings all the ideas and he just gets them all in there. Okay? He's not got anything very much new, but he puts together all the old things in a unique way. That's his particular talent. And he gives new twists to the old idea. The old story is much simpler, and he brings in masking and meta-theatre, madness, and the idea that behind the mask, beyond the play, there is nothing. What is there? Like I say, the more you take off the layers of the onion, you find that there's nothing in the middle. It's just layers all the way through. And in the same way, Shakespeare is sort of, you take away the layers of pretense, you take away, you try to get to the truth, you try to get to the heart of it, and you end up, doesn't seem to be anything there. And so that kind of way of thinking is a strong part of Shakespeare's genius. As I mentioned, Macbeth just now, another famous tragedy of Shakespeare's, this connection between meta-theatre, madness, and meaninglessness. Okay, 3 things beginning with M, by chance. Life's but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage, and then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying, meaning nothing. Has no meaning. It's just a tale told by an idiot. What is this life? What is this world? It doesn't make any sense. Now you think about it right now. We come here, we have to be here at 9:15, okay, right? And, the whole of Tokyo is doing its Tokyo thing. Beyond Tokyo, there's the whole of the planet. Beyond the planet, there's the moon, there's the sun. The nearest star would take us millions and millions and millions and millions of years to get to by our present means of transport. That's just the nearest one. How many are out there? We're a tiny little bit of dust. And how often do we think about that in the course of our day? I'm kind of thinking, oh God, I can't find my toothbrush. Where's my toothbrush? We're a tiny little bit of dust and we care about our toothbrush or something. Isn't it the whole irony of our existence? Okay? And again, this is something that Shakespeare is very good at kind of making us understand and think about. Okay? So, like objects in a mirror, shadows are reflections of the real world. But which is the shadow and which is the real? And where is the real? Where do we find, what is reality? Do we even know in ourselves? Do we really understand what we really feel? Dream itself is but a shadow, but in this sense means only, is only a shadow. A dream is only a shadow. And as Hamlet tells Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, I could be bounded in a nutshell and count myself a king of infinite space, were it not that I have bad dreams. Guildenstern says, which dreams indeed are ambition, for the very substance of the ambitious is merely the shadow of a dream. And Hamlet, this is another aspect of this way of thinking in the 17th century. They say, oh, you said that, so let's look at the next logical step, or let's develop the idea, let's push the idea more. So pushing the idea a bit more, he says, a dream itself is but a shadow, and then Rosencrantz says, Truly, and I hold ambition of so airy and light a quality that it is but a shadow's shadow, the shadow of a shadow. And then Hamlet finishes the idea by saying, then are our beggars bodies. Okay? Because the real thing would be the beggar. The ambitious, the people at the top, will be the kings. They're the shadows. And the poor people, they're the real ones. Okay? He turns things, the only real people are the poor ones, the beggars. Our monarchs and outstretched heroes are the shadows of the poor. Okay, so he follows the idea through and pushes it. If you want to say that ambition is a shadow of a shadow, then the only real thing is those who are not ambitious. Okay, so he pushes. This is another aspect of Elizabethan thinking and 17th century thinking too, to push an idea to its kind of conclusion. And so in the end, Hamlet's all about seems. Starts with the appearance of the ghost. His father's ghost comes and says, Hamlet, I was murdered. Now, again, it goes back to religion and how people believed in religion. They didn't believe in ghosts. Protestants didn't believe in ghosts. Why not? Because according to the Bible, when you die, you go to heaven, you go to hell. There's nothing else. So he can't be a ghost. So if Hamlet is seeing a ghost, his Protestant audience will be saying, ghost must be some message from hell. Ghosts can't be real. There aren't any ghosts, really. So he tests the ghost. He doesn't just trust the ghost. If he just trusted the ghost, he'd go straight off and kill his uncle. Boom. But he doesn't. He wants, is the ghost a messenger from hell? Or is it really true? Did my uncle really kill his brother, my father? And so that's why he sets up the play within a play. He asks the actors to act a play showing what he thinks happened in real life, showing the murder, and watching the uncle. What will he do? And the uncle jumps up, stop this! No, I won't accept this. All right? And so Hamlet says, ha ha. He doesn't like it because he knows that it's telling the truth about what he did. So I know now that he really is the murderer. And so that's why the play takes a long time, because he's got a testing whether the ghost is telling the truth. But the drama is all about seems having a public face and a private face. And that's what is really central to Elizabethan life. And when we come to the other side of reality, which is the whole question of dreams, then the play that he really explores the idea of dreams is A Midsummer Night's Dream. And if any of you are interested in seeing Shakespeare, watch A Midsummer Night's Dream. Okay, if your first introduction to Shakespeare is A Midsummer Night's Dream, it's the most attractive play for people who don't know Shakespeare. Okay, it's funny, it's ridiculous, it's a kind of joke. The whole thing's a big joke, but it's got lots of beautiful scenes in it. Okay, you can see here are the fairies, the dreaming people, and the fairies are putting kind of magic into there so that when they wake up they'll see different things, and it's a big fantasy. It's just a huge fantasy, just a lot of fun, just a bit of fun. And half of the characters in it, are magical creatures, and you've got these magical Oberon, the king of the fairies, and Puck, his servant. The play is filled with kind of magical beings. And at the end of the play, Puck, one of the magical creatures, turns to the audience and says, if we shadows, again, as shadows, have offended, think but this and all is mended. But you have but slumbered here. You've just been sleeping here, while these visions did appear, and this weak and idle theme, no more yielding than a dream. It's just what you saw in front of you, so you can just rub your eyes and think, oh, it was like a dream. Okay? So you go out of the theatre thinking, well, I had a very extraordinary dream. And so dreaming, masks, mirrors, these kinds of images. Oh, I said that. What's going on? Let's repeat it. Sorry, we've had that. And that's it, basically. All right, that's that's a really kind of, I think it shows how Shakespeare is really connected with the whole Elizabethan idea of hiding your true identity, especially when it came to religion and politics, and that you had to have two identities. And it's still something to think about today. I mean, who are we? You know, am I what I think I am, or am I what you think I am? Who am I really? Or am I neither of those, or both of those? Or, well, what is identity? Where does it come from? If enough people say that, you know, I don't know, what could it be? That you're a criminal, you'd end up in prison. If enough people said that you're mad, you'd end up in a madhouse. So to a large extent, your identity does come from what others think you are. All right? So do we even get the chance to choose our own identity in this life? And those are the kinds of questions that that they were asking in the 17th century as well. Okay? So I thought it was interesting to look at that. And then the second topic, if you give me 2 or 3 minutes just to find the file, the second topic will be gender, which again is a big topic today. And so I think might be interesting for us. So, ちょっと休憩しましょう. All right, various gender issues relating to Shakespeare. Along with the question of, there are lots of questions that they like to ask about Shakespeare. Was Shakespeare Catholic? Was Shakespeare Shakespeare? Okay, I don't accept that. You know, Shakespeare for me was Shakespeare, and I think it's very clear. But some people want to believe that somebody else wrote Shakespeare's plays. I don't know. There's been quite a few movies recently, like Shakespeare in Love and things like that, that try to show that Shakespeare was a different person. And there are some people who believe that it was all a big secret, that Shakespeare wasn't really Shakespeare. I'm sorry, but I think that's all rubbish. Okay, Shakespeare was Shakespeare. And anybody who thinks differently is basically wrong. I think it's pretty clear. So, another of the topics that people like to ask about is, was Shakespeare gay? And so we'll be looking at that question a little bit. And does it matter anyway? Who cares? And then Shakespeare's attitude towards women. A chauvinist is somebody who's sexist against women. So one way of looking at Shakespeare in some of his work is that he does seem to be against women. He says things that go against women. And in other cases, he seems like a kind of proto-feminist. So the thing about Shakespeare is that he can be almost anything we want him to be, because he shows the world, and the world is almost anything we want it to be as well. And then I've put here women in early modern England, but I think most of that will get cut because we already talked about that topic. So here we go. In one of his sonnets, Shakespeare writes, God, I can't read it. A woman's face with nature's own hand painted. A woman's face painted with the hand of nature. Okay, painted by nature. Hast thou, have you have such a face. Soy thou, anatao, motte. And he calls, anata, dare desu ka? Who is thou, who is you? The master mistress of my passion. The master mistress. Okay? The danse onna of my passion. All right? A woman's gentle heart, but not acquainted with shifting change, as is false woman's passion. You have the good part of a woman, you have a woman's heart. But you don't have the zurui nature of a woman. which he says a woman has, okay? An eye more bright than theirs, less false in Rowling. You've got a bright eye, but it's not a false eye. Women can smile at you and make you think that they're interested in you. Maybe. Again, reality, are they really interested, or is it just a game? Gilding the object whereupon it gazeth, a man in hue, all hues in his controlling, which steals men's eyes and women's souls amazeth. You are such a person that you steal men's eyes, men want to look at you. And women go, wow, when they see you. And for a woman wert thou first created. You were made to be a woman. At first. Till nature, as she wrought thee, as nature made you, fell a-doting, fell in love with you. Nature, as she made you, fell in love. She was going to make you a woman, but she fell in love with you. And nature in English poetry and in thinking, nature is female. You see, so nature fell in love with you, so she made you a man. She gave you, by addition, me of thee defeated. She gave you something, all right, and that means that I lose. By adding one thing to my purpose, nothing. One thing that's no good for me, doesn't no use to me. But since and what is he talking about here? Well, he's talking about a penis. Okay? Nature gave you a penis. We know he's talking about a penis because he says, but since she pricked thee out for women's pleasure. Now, to prick something out in gardening means, when you plant seeds and you have too many coming up, you prick out the ones that you don't need, the extra ones. You prick them out. But prick is also a Horgen word for penis. Imademo. A prick is a penis. Okay? Nature pricked thee out. Nature gave you a penis. For women's pleasure. So, mine be thy love, and thy love's use their treasure. They can sleep with you, they can have sex with you, okay? But I can love you. Okay? That's what he's saying here. Now he's very careful again. He doesn't say, hey, I'm Shakespeare, I'm gay. He says, hey, I'm Shakespeare, if you were a woman, I would love you. I would want to sleep with you. But you're not a woman, so I can't. So he's not crossing a line, because if he did cross that line, again, that's one of the things that you had to keep secret in Elizabethan England. He couldn't openly say he was gay. But this poem comes about as close as anybody could in those days to saying that he's interested in a man. But it's not, even then, it's complicated, okay? The man okay, he said we don't know who the man was. Okay, we don't know who he's written this to. But there are a few things we need to think about. What have we got? He talks about the master mistress of my passion. All right. He talks about nature pricked thee out. Nature gave you a penis, basically, is what he's saying there. He's using a gardening metaphor, but people will, oh yes, we know what you mean. So if we turn it into modern English, well, it's on your print so you can see. You are the master mistress of my passion. You have a woman's heart face painted with nature's hand. You've got the gentle heart of a woman, but you don't know the shifting change that's common with false women. Your eye is brighter than theirs, but not as falsely roving. It lights up the objects that it looks upon. You're a man in appearance. You're a man who controls all others, and you catch the attention of men and the souls of women. You are made to be a woman, until nature as she made you fell in love with you, and made it impossible for me to win you by adding something quite unsuitable for my purpose. But since she chose you to be for the pleasure of women, may your love be for me, even if the act of loving you is for them. All right, that's basically, if we translate it into modern English, it's saying something like that. I've left out the penis bit, because I didn't know how to do that. But basically, that's what he's saying. So, all right. Now, Shakespeare's sonnets were published in 1609 while he was still alive, but without his permission. He wrote them and passed them around among his friends. And somehow somebody collected them and published them, but he never said that they could be published. Now, because they were published without his permission, we consider that they're a good insight into what he really thought. This was supposed to be private, this was supposed to be personal, this was supposed to be just for his friends. He never wanted it to be public. And so the sonnets are perhaps as close as we can get to finding out what Shakespeare himself really thought. Because in the plays, it's all acting, it's all seeming. But maybe this is kind of guiding us a little bit towards Shakespeare, towards his true heart, what he really felt and thought. And most of the sonnets appear to be addressed to a man. So most of these love poems, which they are mostly love poems, are addressed to a man. And it's very hard to tell whether they are platonic, that means just kind of like, I respect you, mentally, emotionally, I feel close to you, or whether it's actually physical and sexual. It could be Henry Wriothesley, because of the initials WH. It could be either of these people, okay, because of the initials. Very often, Henry, they put it at WH, so it could be this person, they just put the other way around, or it could be this one. We don't know. They were both patrons of Shakespeare, that is, they gave him money to help him to write his plays. How did people get, how did Shakespeare get, how did people in those days who were writers get money? They got it from rich people who said, I like what you're doing. Here's some money, keep on doing it. Okay, those people were patrons or patrons, and both of these, helped Shakespeare. They supported him in that way. So the idea that Shakespeare might have been in love with one of these people is something that some people like to think about. Here's one of them. Henry Wriothesley. Come along. What's going on? Sorry, I should show you their faces clearly, okay? There they are. These are the two candidates. Now, if you're going to go by physicality, you'd say, well, that's the one that looks as if he was made to be a woman, wouldn't you, really? So that's probably he's probably the strongest candidate. But, these are the two people that he's probably written most of his sonnets to, one of them, and quite possibly this one, but might be this one. So, okay, was he gay? Well, there are lots of other examples in his work that show the author's attraction to men, or suggest that there's some sort of attraction to men, but it's not always clear. Firstly, early modern ideas about, we've got homosexual and you've got homosocial. Homosocial is like you feel close with men, or women feel close with women. It's not unusual to see women in Japan, for example, holding hands. It doesn't mean that they're lesbians. Okay? In Japanese society, it's perfectly natural for naked men to be together in the hot spring. In many countries, they never do such a thing. Naked men, you don't see naked men together, right? It would be a homosexual thing. But in Japan, nobody thinks that people who go to a hot spring are gay. Okay? It's just part of the society. It's part of what people do. Okay? So different cultures have different ideas of what's normal. And they did have a very strong feeling that there could be very, very, very strong friendship between men. It didn't have to be, it was not supposed to be sexual. In those days, a bed was a very expensive thing. It was quite normal for people to sleep in the same bed. And again, it was not necessarily sexual. All right? for example, when people were travelling, they would often sleep with their servants. It was just common, it was just normal, it was a kind of joshiki of the time, because they could, a bed was an expensive thing, so they get 2 or 3 people in the bed to keep them all warm on a cold winter's night, okay, but it wasn't supposed to be sexual. So that's part of it. The limits of what is just sort of homosocial but not homosexual, were different in those days. And also, of course, poetry could be a form of fiction. We don't. Hamlet talks about suicide, and we don't suppose that means that Shakespeare wanted to commit suicide. If the poems talk about, homoerotic kind of issues, it doesn't mean necessarily that Shakespeare was gay. I don't know. I mean, it's an open question. But the other thing to think about was, well, does it matter anyway? I would say, of course, it doesn't matter. The same as whether Shakespeare was a Catholic or not. To me, it wouldn't matter. But James Joyce, very famous writer from the earlier part of the 20th century, although I think I've got the date wrong. He can't have written that in 1960. It must have been later than that. But he wrote, the artist, like the God of creation, remains within or behind or above his handiwork. Once somebody's written something, it's what they wrote that's important. Shakespeare is famous because of what he wrote, not because of whether he was gay or what he had for breakfast or what his religion was. None of that really matters. The French philosopher wrote a paper called The Death of the Author, saying that once a work is published, the author, it doesn't matter. And from that point of view, what matters is not Shakespeare's sexuality, but what he tells us about sexuality, what the way that he shows us how early modern sexuality and early modern gender works. That's what's interesting. Not what he felt, but what he makes his readers feel, what he makes us feel. And that's what I'd like to look at for the next 10 or 15 minutes for the remainder of the class. One thing, of course, that we need to remember is that on the stage, all the female parts were acted by men, or more typically boys. I mean, young men or boys. So every time, like you think of Romeo and Juliet, I think I talked about this, you think of the fact that Juliet would have been a man on the stage. Okay? It would have been a boy. And for Shakespeare, very often you get the feeling that what he's saying is that boy on the stage is a more perfect woman than any woman I've ever met. Okay, it doesn't mean that he was sexually interested in the boy on the stage, just that the way that boy looks, dressed up as a woman like that, for him, that's a perfect image of a woman. So he could, they could be more, that could be part of what's going on. But like I say, I want to try and get away from what Shakespeare himself may have thought or felt and look at his works and see what they're telling us. Having male actors take female parts, Shakespeare couldn't control that. That was just part of the way that the drama was in those days. But Shakespeare is notable for the way he plays with that, the way he uses that. He introduces numerous cross-dressing characters. Women who take on a man's part. And that's curious, isn't it? You see, you've got a man dressed as a woman on the stage pretending to be a man. Okay? For example, in Merchant of Venice, Portia is a woman, but she's dressed herself up as a man, pretending to be a lawyer, a judge, and her maid is supposed to be an apprentice. So they are women, they are men dressed as women for their part on the stage, and then the woman that they are on the stage is dressed up and pretending to be a man. That's pretty complicated, okay? And it happens a lot. All right, it doesn't just happen once or twice. In the same play, Shylock's daughter, Jessica, disguises herself as a boy Shylock is Jewish and his daughter is Jewish, and she wants to go away and marry a Christian. So how can she get away? She dresses up as a boy in order to be able to run away together with no one suspecting. Very complicated stuff going on in Twelfth Night, where here we've got Viola disguised as a eunuch, that is, as a man who is being castrated. This happened again in the early modern period. It still happened. Boys who had beautiful voices could end up that they would lose their testicles, okay, because they would keep it for their singing voice. So they grow up, as they still did this, yes, even in the 16th, 17th. It was, I'm not sure, by the 17th century, I think maybe it was dying out, but I think in the 16th century it was still something that still occasionally happened. And that's what she's disguised herself as here. A man with no testicles. And she falls in love with the Duke Orsino, but Orsino thinks she's a man. Orsino thinks, Orsino can't fall in, she doesn't, Orsino thinks this is a man, even a man with no testicles, but she's thinking, I'm not really a man, I'm a woman and I love him. Okay, and we've got this difficult dynamic where she's, he doesn't know, I can't show who seeming, I can't show who I really am, I can't show my true woman's identity to this man. And then we've got the opposite thing happening here. The Countess, the same woman, thinking that she's a man, the Countess Olivia falls in love with the man. And she, I can't tell her that I'm actually really a woman. Okay, so, Shakespeare really likes to develop those kinds of situations. He really likes to work on them. So the whole question of gender identity, that again is such a big question today, and such a big matter of debate now, was a big matter in Shakespeare's time as well. Another thing that we can look at is that the woman kind of taking on a manly role, the woman being a man. We've got women dressing as men, and there is one case where Antony dresses as a woman, but mostly it's women dressing as men. It's not usually men dressing as women. But another thing is that the way that women challenge the man's position. In The Taming of the Shrew, we've got Katharina, who is a very manly kind of woman. She's a strong woman. You've got Portia in Julius Caesar, you've got Lady Macbeth in Macbeth. These two are quite similar. And Portia says, I have a man's mind, but a woman's might, a woman's power. Lady Macbeth says, she famously says, unsex me here, take away my womanly sex and make me be like a man. So the idea that the woman could sort of take on a manly role, so that according to the Elizabethan idea, a woman had kindness, a woman had compassion, and these two women, Portia and Lady Macbeth, they're planning to do something kind of ijiwaru and violent. They're planning to murder someone. And so they ask to be made into men. Okay? Because the idea is that it's not something that a woman can naturally do. So they have to become psychologically men. Okay, so the image of the powerful woman. Now, I thought that I'd cut out most. Where do I end here? So much more. I think I wanted to cut out.
I think you cut out this part.
Yeah. Sorry, this part should be gone. Yeah. And I was going to do the bit on witches if we've got time, and keep going here. No, because we've already talked about all of this, you see, in other classes. So we don't need that. Women as martyrs, again, we've talked about it, okay? So I don't need to go through all of that again. But women as witches is the bit that I thought I'd finish off on today. We haven't really talked about it in much depth. Yeah, I think it's a little. I don't know why the sound seems to be coming out from here, not from. Never mind. Now, you know, when we think of witches today, we think of it as something like funny. It's a sort of harmless thing. But as we know from things that I've said already on the course, in that period, people really did believe in witches, and they really believed that they were agents of the devil. In the 1580s, when Shakespeare would have been, you know, youngish man, 64 people were tried as witches in Essex, which would be fairly local to him, not too far away from where he was living and working. And most of them were found guilty and they were hanged. And we talked about King James and the book that he wrote on witches, and how I think I might have said that Shakespeare wrote his Macbeth in order to please the king. He put the witches. The story of Macbeth, like most of Shakespeare's stories, like all of Shakespeare's stories really, is not an original story. It's taken from history. There was a real historical Macbeth who really was King of Scotland. Okay? Shakespeare changes the history a lot. The real Macbeth was a good king. And in Shakespeare's play, Macbeth is a bad king. But he also adds things that are not in the original story. He puts the witches in to the story to keep the king, the new king, happy, because he knows that the new king likes the whole idea of witches and witchcraft, and that he's written a book about it. These days we mostly see witchcraft as a form of violence against women, and reflecting a fear, a basic fear in early modern England, a fear of women. Some of which comes from Christianity, because in the Bible it's Eve who was tempted by the serpent, and then she tempted Adam. And women were considered to be more vulnerable to the temptations of the flesh. And the associations of menstruation, say with the moon, that helped to kind of feed the fear that women were closer to evil, but they were more easily made evil than men. Okay, yeah, not much really. I'm just summing up what I've said here. You've got the things that I talked about before Christmas, the effect that women were having on slowly changing the way that society was thinking about women, and challenging men in the area of suffering through the martyrs, powerful women like the person who sent me the question that I put in the blog about women who were queens. But at the same time, a strong feeling of suspicion in the society against women. It's a man's world, and men essentially do not trust women. We can also go back to, Greek philosophy. Plato was very big in the early modern period. And it's the same kind of idea. The real friendship is between men. The real connection is between men. So it's not so much what Shakespeare himself thought or felt, but what the plays and the Shakespeare's writings tell us about gender in those days. He's not giving us answers. He's giving us the questions. He's showing us, all the different possibilities of human relations, and he can get us thinking about our own. How do we see? What is our own sense of gender identity? He brings up all kinds of questions there. So the interesting question for me is not what was Shakespeare's sexuality, but how Shakespeare explores the idea of gender relationships, and particularly the way they were seen in those days, in early modern times. So I'm going to finish there.